Hello and welcome to this exploring session on our second session looking at the troublesome reign of King John. The story so far. Well, it's a very complicated narrative so far. We're only one episode in, but so far James has been pulling the trucks up the hill, and they've been creating a lot of problems because they don't like him because he's a redhead. Sorry, that's Troublesome Trucks. That's a Thomas the Tank Engine episode. If you want to know the story so far, please go back and watch the previous video. It's all sort of complicated lineal descent issues and who's going to be king and who should be king, which King John's having some issues in France. Some compromises are occurring, and it's all very interesting. So, without further ado, we're going to go through the people in the room who are going to be reading this session. We're looking at scenes 5 through 13 of this fabulous play. And we're going to start with reading King John. Reading the title character is...
Hi, I'm Steve Longstaffe, scholar of early modern drama based in Lancaster in the UK.
And reading a different king, King Philip and a boy is...
Hello, I'm Lynn Freitas. I teach writing here in the Northwestern United States.
And reading Friar Antony and a messenger today is...
I'm Eric, and I'm still here.
Reading Limoges and a nun is...
Hi, I'm Pamela. I'm an actor based in London.
And today, reading The Bastard, Falconbridge, is...
Sarah Blake. I'm an actor, writer and director based in Germany.
And reading Pandulph and Pembroke today is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott, based in Suffolk, and I'm neither an actor nor an academic.
And reading Queen Elinor and Friar Lawrence today is...
Oh, I'm Lois. I'm a retired academic living in London.
And reading Arthur today is...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm an author living in London.
And reading Constance and Hubert today is...
Alexandra, clueless but keen.
And reading Louis, Friar Thomas and Essex today is...
Hello, Dan, actor in Montpellier, France.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton, and I will be reading stage directions and also Peter the Prophet at points further along. So without further ado, we're going to leap back into the action. We are at scene 5, and there's all sorts of people coming on stage now. It's quite a crowded stage. Enter the King of England, the King of France, Arthur, the Bastard, Louis, Limoges, Constance, Blanche, Chatillon, the Earls of Pembroke, Salisbury, and Queen Elinor, a percentage of which will actually say dialogue. And we start with King John.
This is the day, the long-desired day wherein the realms of England and of France stand highly blessed in a lasting peace. But thrice happy is the bridegroom and the bride, from whose sweet bridal such a concord springs, to make of mortal foes immortal friends.
Ungodly peace made by another's war.
Unhappy peace that ties thee from revenge. Rouse thee, Plantagenet! Live not to see the butcher of the great Plantagenet! Kings, princes, and ye peers of either realms, pardon my rashness, and forgive the zeal that carries me in fury to a deed of high desert, of honour, and of arms. A boon, O kings, a boon doth Philip beg, prostrate upon his knee, which knee shall cleave unto the superficies of the earth, till France and England grant this glorious boon.
Speak, Philip. England grants thee thy request.
And France confirms whate'er is in his power. Bastard.
No.
Then, Duke, sit fast. I level at thy head.
That's the bastard speech.
Yes, apologies. Though I did love the fact that you just said bastard.
Okay.
I love that. That worked well. Sorry, that's my bad for not picking up on that.
Yeah, the typography does not indicate that here.
Yes,
so.
indeed.
So I haven't got this in my script either. What
Sorry, it's the wrong speech prefix. We haven't got one in.
Philip only has one line.
Yeah.
And then it's the bastard.
Where it says bastard, that's your name.
There, right. Okay, that's me. Right,
Yeah.
okay.
So, King Philip, give us the cue in. Actually, no, King John, speak Philip. Let's cue in the bastard.
I said, speak, Philip. England grants thee thy request.
And France confirms whate'er is in his power.
Then, Duke, sit fast. I level at thy head too base a ransom for my father's life. Princes, I crave the combat with the Duke that braves it in dishonour of my sire. Your words are past, nor can you now reverse the princely promise that revives my soul, whereat methinks I see his sinews shake. This is the boon, dread lords, which, granted once, all life or death are pleasant to my soul, since I shall live and die in Richard's right.
Base bastard, misbegotten of a king, to interrupt these holy nuptial rites with brawls and tumults to a duke's disgrace. Let it suffice. I scorn to join in fight with one so far unequal to myself.
A fine excuse. Kings, if you will be kings, then keep your words, and let us combat it.
Philip, we cannot force the Duke to fight, being a subject unto neither realm. But tell me, Austria, if an English duke should dare thee thus, wouldst thou accept the challenge?
Else let the world account the ostrich duke the greatest coward living on the earth.
Then cheer thee, Philip. John will keep his word. Kneel down. In sight of Philip, King of France, and all these princely lords assembled here, I gird thee with the sword of Normandy, and of that land I do invest thee Duke. So shall thou be in living and in land, nothing inferior unto Austria.
King John, I tell thee flatly to thy face, thou wrong'st mine honour, and that thou mayst see how much I scorn thy new-made duke and thee. I flatly say I will not be compelled. And so farewell, Sir Duke of low degree. I'll find a time to match you for this gear.
And Limoges exits, and the bastard starts to follow.
Stay, Philip. Let him go. The honour's thine.
I cannot live unless his life be mine.
Thy forwardness this day hath joyed my soul, and made me think my Richard lives in thee.
Lordings, let's in and spend the wedding day in masques and triumphs, letting quarrels cease.
Ah, but here enters Pandulph, a cardinal from Rome, before the king can indeed exit himself.
Stay, King of England, I charge thee, join not hands with him that stands accursed of God and men. Know, John, that I, Pandulph, Cardinal of Milan, and legate from the See of Rome, demand of thee, in the name of our Holy Father, the Pope Innocent, why thou dost contrary to the laws of our Holy Mother, the Church, and our Holy Father, the Pope, disturb the quiet of the Church, and disannul the election of Stephen Langton, whom His Holiness hath elected Archbishop of Canterbury. This, in His Holiness' name, I demand of thee.
And what hast thou, or the Pope thy master, to do, to demand of me how I employ mine own? No, Sir Priest, as I honour the Church and holy churchmen, so I scorn to be a subject to the greatest prelate in the world. Tell thy master so from me, and say, John of England said it, that never an Italian priest of them all shall either have tithe, toll, or polling penny out of England. But as I am king, so will I reign next under God, supreme head, both over spiritual and temporal. And he that contradicts me in this, I'll make him hobheadless.
King Philip.
So sorry. Oh, What King John? What King John? Know you what you say, thus to blaspheme against our holy father, the Pope?
Philip, though thou and all the princes of Christendom suffer themselves to be abused by a prelate's slavery, my mind is not of such base temper. If the Pope will be king in England, let him win it with sword. I know no other title he can allege to mine inheritance.
John, is this thine answer?
What then?
Then I, Pandulph of Padua, legate from the Apostolic See, do, in the name of St. Peter and his successor, our Holy Father, Pope Innocent, pronounce thee accursed, discharging every of thy subjects of all duty and fealty that they do owe to thee, and pardon and forgiveness of sin to those or them whatsoever which shall carry arms against thee or murder thee. This I pronounce, and charge all good men to abhor thee as an excommunicate person.
So, sir, the more the fox is cursed, the better he fares. But if God bless me and my land, let the Pope and his shavelings curse, and spare not.
Furthermore, I charge thee, Philip, King of France, and all the kings and princes of Christendom, to make war upon this miscreant. And whereas thou hast made a league with him, and confirmed it by oath, I do, in the name of our foresaid father, the Pope, acquit thee of that oath, as unlawful, being made with an heretic. How sayest thou, Philip? Dost thou obey?
Brother of France, what say you to the Cardinal?
I say I am sorry for your majesty, requesting you to submit yourself to the Church of Rome.
And what say you to our league, if I do not submit?
What should I say? I must obey the Pope.
Obey the Pope, and break your oath to God.
The legate hath absolved me of mine oath, then yield to Rome, or I defy thee here.
Why, Philip, I defy the Pope and thee, false as thou art, and perjured King of France, unworthy man to be accounted king. Givest thou the sword into a prelate's hands? Pandulph, where I of abbots, monks, and friars have taken somewhat to maintain my wars, now will I take no more, but all they have. I'll rouse the lazy lubbers from their cells, and in despite, I'll send him to the Pope. Mother, come you with me, and for the rest that will not follow John in this attempt, confusion light upon their damned souls. Come, lords, fight for your king, that fighteth for your good.
And exit King John and all his mates.
And are they gone? Pandulph, thyself shall see how France will fight for Rome and Romish rights. Nobles to arms, and let him not pass the seas. Let's take him captive and in triumph lead the King of England to the gates of Rome. Arthur, bestir thee, man, and thou shalt see what Philip, King of France, will do for thee. Oh, we do have a Blanche.
Mm-hmm.
There is a Blanche. I was wrong. Someone leap in to be Blanche.
And will your grace upon your wedding day forsake your bride and follow dreadful drums? Nay, good my lord, stay you at home with me.
Sweetheart, content thee, and we shall agree.
Follow me, lords. Lord Cardinal, lead the way. Drums shall be music to this wedding day.
And they exit. Yes, having discussed in advance whether Blanche was in the scene, at the last hurdle she appears to say something. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, it's like everything's sort of ironed out. We've got an agreement, and then enter Pandulph bearing prose. And suddenly everyone starts speaking in prose for a bit. It's like, I bring it for you, and it expands to fill the room. And it's only really when John goes, no, sod the Pope. But he goes back into verse. I wonder if that's indicative of something. Maybe not. Who knows? Thoughts from the room about this scene? It's everything, nothing stable in this play. You think you've got some kind of new status quo, and then something comes up and topples it. Anyone want to leap in? Lynn.
Yeah, my question was about the verse prose toggle. How sure are we about this text that this isn't actually verse set as prose? Does anybody know the answer to that?
I'm looking at it right. Go ahead, Lois.
It doesn't scan. I mean, it would be pretty difficult to scan a lot of that as verse.
You can't force that into pentameter. That's always really interesting to me as sort of a language nerd, that usually means something, or it has a different effect. Whether it has a different intent, we don't know, but it does have a different effect on the ear when it goes from verse to prose. So that's just.
Yes, I was struck by it that Chatillon's speech at the very beginning of the play, when he's making Arthur's claim to the throne, is also in prose. I mean, neither of those things sound to me like what ought to be in prose. I mean, they're the sort of grand stuff that you expect to find in verse. I don't know what's going on here. I mean, some writers apparently did write their plays in prose first and then versified them. And I almost wonder if something like that happened here. Peele meant to get back to it and never did.
Yeah.
All the actors got in the way. I saw lots of hands. Let's go to Stephen first.
There do seem to be sort of almost lines of iambic pentameter in there, though, or you could read them as. So there might be a sort of hybrid form here, which is to do with the gravity of the occasion. One of the things we conventionally attach verse to is sort of high status moments, and even though Pandulph is given its prose on the page, but furthermore, I charge thee, Philip, King of France. You can bring the iams out of that.
Really?
Okay, we may get bogged down in structural things. But we'll move on. Alexandra.
Just adding on to this structural thing, whatever the intention might have been, I think the effect that it has is really nice. Where we have the musicality of when constructed, well on stage, is you'd have the musicality of everything's going to be resolved and we've got, this thing going on, and then someone slams a truck into that and goes, hold the phone, stop the music, excommunication. As I say, whatever the original intention might have been, the effect now could be very nice and powerful. I also find a structural confusion in how we, as you said at the beginning, we have a whole lot of people turning up on stage, and quite a handful of them say one line just to kind of confirm that they exist, and that's about it. So I think that's slightly problematic in a staging sense, and confusing. Was confusing to me as a reader.
One of the things I think to say in favour of it as prose is they kind of come on and make lists or things that sound a bit legalese. Like Pandulph is coming on and he's not literally reading a document, but it has that sort of flow of some of these things, and therefore no John that I Pandulph it has that sort of never-ending prose that some legal documents have. So I that's in its favour. I'm going to throw in there. I don't want to talk about that too much. I'd rather talk about what's going on in the scene, but I'll still go around. Hands are already up. Sarah.
Oh, I was just going to say, what Alex said originally. That was pretty much how I took it. There is a harmony in the political situation, and the fact that they're all speaking in verse kind of matches that. And then all of a sudden, this dude swoops in, starts speaking prose, and completely upsets everything. Everything that's been arranged, everything that's been strategized. He just completely upsets the apple cart. And I mean, I can't believe that Peele didn't do that knowingly, or that it was just a mistake that he forgot to come back and put it into verse. I mean, it's just so effective.
I should point out that we don't have that much harmony in this scene. There's an awful lot of certainly backroom,
but it's on the
asides
surface
and things. It's a very troubled piece. You know, it can fall apart very, very quickly. Dan,
and it does. Yeah.
Just to say that I agree with what everyone has been saying, and as you know, I will consult the text, the original text here, the 1591. It seems that, while this is a problematic text in terms of things are not where they should be at some points, what does seem to flow with it is when it goes from verse and it goes to prose and it goes back to verse and to prose, it seems pretty much like a choice. And then when they did do the second quarter, which is John 1 and 2 together, whilst certain things were fixed, this, if it needed to be fixed, was not fixed. That says to me that supports everything that you're saying, as well as the fact that somebody who corrected the text, or sort of corrected the text, didn't go bother correcting this part of it.
Alan.
Yeah, I mean, it's the third time we've had a sort of prose interruption. We had the cotillion one at the beginning. We had the opening of the scene with the bastard. And then we've had this third one. I must admit, reading the bit we just did with Pandulph, I found that incredibly difficult to read because of the legalistic form of punctuation in some ways, which I found very difficult to make it flow.
I think it just never ends. I mean, it's that kind of thing. Anyway, just to move on to the scene itself, what's going on in the scene, that interjection, that the way the scene functions. Any thoughts about what's going on with characters and stuff, Stephen?
Poor old Blanche. What stops this just being a sort of diplomatic power play, where we might fall asleep, is that we've had a marriage very hastily arranged, which just completely falls apart in front of her. So even she didn't speak to the end. I think, she's a vital presence, or perhaps the two of them, but certainly Blanche. This is supposed to be her wedding day, and these kind of, mad uncles come in and just all start banging heads with one another. So, I mean, I think to me that adds a real dimension to it that you wouldn't get, even though she doesn't say very much. She doesn't need to say very much, as this falls apart. And also, to pick up Alan's point, the legalism of this language, it's somebody walking into your reception with a whole list of T's and C's, isn't it? The clash there between the sort of human union that's supposed to be going on, if you assume it's an actual marriage, as opposed to, yes, Daddy, I'll do that. It's a completely dynastic marriage. So I think it gives a real sort of emotional heft.
It's repeating a similar pattern we've had in earlier scenes, where you have the action of the scene and then you get left with a few people who sort of just go, what the hell just happened? And just give it that slightly more focused dimension on that. And actually, it's a very light touch in that sense. At the end with just a few lines, but I think possibly the way it's structured actually has more of an effect than if it was a continual thing. If she's just left there in her dress, perhaps, all red, as part of the ceremonies, it looks like they've either come from the ceremony, or they're on their way, or something along those lines. And then the Philip ends with "drums shall be music to this wedding day." I mean, there's a way that actually structurally, I think that has a bit more punch to it. Alexandra, I saw a hand.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that this wedding, even if it was purely dynastic, it is done and it's official in the eyes of God, and the God side of things is massively important. This is, if you are a Catholic, the excommunication that happens to John, as if you are a Catholic, as the King of France is, it's an enormous game changer. If you are a Protestant viewing this as at the time of performance, and you're going, yes, good job, John, standing up to the Pope, it still has a massive effect on how we view the characters and the story. So either way, it's an enormous shift in the world of the story, with what seems to be a little bit of, to continue the godly metaphor, Deus ex machina. You know, it's, oh, hi, John. You know that guy you didn't want to consecrate as Archbishop of Canterbury? Yeah, we excommunicate you for it. Entirely unrelated to what's been going on in the plot, but it massively affects the plot. And I think we are looking at it, you know, we from the future, it's a lot easier to miss that for us as an audience, you know, that doesn't look the same way on religion. But I think it needs to be enormous.
It is one of the few elements of the play where I do think back to the John Bale King John. You know, this moment here, and there are some other moments. I don't think it's a serious source or inspiration for this play, but there are those little echoes in there that it's an element that the people are very focused on in a Protestant country at the time. Lois.
Yeah, I'm now channeling Helen, I think, the historian's line on this, because I'm pretty sure all the repetition of Pope through all of this, and the fact that Pandulph even says that John's subjects are released from duty to him and are now entitled to assassinate him if they want, all that would remind people. I mean, this happened in 1570, didn't it? That the Pope excommunicated Elizabeth and released her subjects from allegiance to her, and you know, essentially made assassination legal.
Yes, Lynn.
I was going to say that this scene, I'm sort of echoing you, Robert, that it certainly focuses our attention on how fragile the peace is. There's really not much negotiation. Philip doesn't pull John aside and go, come on, there must be some way for you guys to work this out so that we can all be friends. There really isn't much attempt to negotiate with the papacy. It's like, oh, the Pope says I shouldn't be friends with you anymore. Sorry, I have no choice. So, yeah, the political alliance was never terribly robust. And let's focus on that for a second. No.
They kind of... Sorry.
Oh, yeah, go, Eric.
I was just going to say they kind of get exactly what they wanted from the beginning, which is basically war.
Yes, we offered you peace, we offered you trade. You didn't want those things. You wanted war. Here you go. Stephen, last thought before we move on.
Well, just to pick up at Lynn's point, really, it's a sort of companion, isn't it, to the, you know, 10 v 10, two high status people who won't back down, which we see first in a comic light. You know, outside the walls of Angers, which we did yesterday, and it moves straight into this, where the same thing happens again, but it's not funny. So I think that it's quite an interesting, quite a smart structural parallel that we've been given here. You know, the first time as, and the second time as.
Yes, because there really isn't any humour here at all. In the way of other scenes, there's usually at least one chink of a joke somewhere, but there's nothing here. Or at least I didn't detect any. We're going to move on to scenes 6, 7, 8, and 9, which follow on in quick succession of each other, and we'll discuss them at the end of themselves to give a sense of how they are supposed to flow together, or not flow together. We shall see. So we're going to go in with scene 6. There are excursions. The bastard pursues Austria and kills him. Oh, poor Limoges.
Thus hath King Richard's son performed his vows, and offered Austria's blood for sacrifice unto his father's ever-living soul. Brave Coeur de Lion! Now my heart doth say I have deserved, though not to be thy heir, yet as I am, thy base begotten son. A name as pleasing to thy Philip's heart as to be called the Duke of Normandy. Lie there, a prater, every ravening fowl. And as my father triumphed in thy spoils and trod thine ensigns underneath his feet, so do I tread upon thy cursed self, and leave thy body to the fowls for food.
And there are more excursions. We can assume that Limoges is taken off stage somehow, but maybe he's still lying there on the ground. Who knows? Enter Arthur, Constance, the Dauphin Louis, having taken Queen Elinor prisoner.
Thus hath the God of kings with conquering arm dispersed the foes to true succession, proud and disturber of thy country's peace, Constance doth live to tame thine insolence, and on thy head will now avenged be for all the mischiefs hatched in thy brain.
Contemptuous dame, unreverent duchess thou, to brave so great a queen as Elinor. Base scold, hast thou forgot that I was wife and mother to 3 mighty English kings? I charge thee then, and you forsooth, sir boy, to set your grandmother at liberty, and yield to John, your uncle and your king.
'Tis not thy words, proud queen, shall carry it.
Nor yet thy threats, proud dame, shall daunt my mind. I'll find a time to triumph in thy fall.
My time is now to triumph in thy fall, and thou shalt know that Constance will triumph.
Mother, wait, use Queen Elinor. Though she be captive, use her like herself. Sweet grandam, bear with what my mother said. Your highness shall be used honourably.
And here enter a French messenger.
Louis, my lord, Duke Arthur, and the rest, to arms in haste. King John rallies his men and begins the fight afresh, and swears withal to lose his life or set his mother free.
Arthur, away, 'tis time to look about.
Why, how now, dame? What, is your courage cooled?
No, Elinor, my courage gathers strength and hopes to lead both John and thee as slaves. And in that hope I hail thee to the field.
And they exit. We have a scene 8, which is basically a stage directions. It's very exciting stuff. Can we have some excursion battle fighting actions from you all as I read the stage direction? Elinor is rescued by King John, and Arthur is taken prisoner. Exeunt sound victory. Victory is sounded. We go into scene 9. Re-enter King John, Queen Elinor, and Arthur as prisoner. The bastard Pembroke, Salisbury, and Hubert de Burgh.
Thus right triumphs, and John triumphs in right. Arthur, thou seest France cannot bolster thee. Thy mother's pride hath brought thee to this fall. But if at last, nephew, thou yield thyself into the guidance of thine uncle John, thou shalt be used as becomes a prince.
Uncle, my grandam taught her nephew this, to bear captivity with patience. Might have prevailed, not right, for I am king of England, though thou may diadem.
Son John, soon shall we teach him to forget these proud presumptions and to know himself.
Although he never will forget his claim, I would he lived not to remember it. But leaving this, we will to England now, and take some order with our popelings there, that swell with pride and fat of laymen's lands. Philip, I make thee chief in this affair. Ransack the abbeys, cloisters, priories, convert their coin unto my soldiers' use. And whatsoe'er he be within my land that goes to Rome for justice and for law, while he may have his right within the realm, let he be judged a traitor to the state and suffer as an enemy to England. Mother, we leave you here beyond the seas as regent of our provinces in France, while we to England take a speedy course and thank our God that gave us victory. Hubert de Burgh, take Arthur here to thee. Be he thy prisoner, Hubert. Keep him safe, for on his life doth hang thy sovereign's crown. But in his death consists thy sovereign's bliss. Then, Hubert, as thou shortly hearest from me, so use the prisoner as I have given thee in charge.
Frolic, young prince, though I your keeper be, yet shall your keeper live at your command.
As please my God, so shall become of me.
My son, to England I will see thee shipped, and pray to God to send thee safe ashore.
Now wars are done, I long to be at home, to dive into the monks' and abbots' bags, to make some sport among the smooth-skinned nuns, and keep some revel with the fools and friars.
To England, lords, each look unto your charge, and arm yourselves against the Roman pride.
And they exit. We go into scene 10. We're going back over to the French side. Enter Philip, King of France, Louis, his son, Pandulph, Cardinal Pandulph as well.
Every man attached with this mishap, why frown you so? Why droop ye, lords of France? Methinks it differs from a warlike mind to lower it for check or two of chance. Has Limoges escaped the bastard's spite? A little sorrow. Had Limoges escaped the bastard's spite, a little sorrow might have served our loss. Brave Austria, heaven joys thee. Heaven joys to have thee there.
His soul is safe and free from purgatory. Our Holy Father hath dispensed his sins. The blessed saints have heard our orisons, and all are mediators for his soul. And in the right of these most holy wars, his holiness free pardon doth pronounce to all that follow you gainst English heretics, who stand accursed in our mother church.
And enter Constance alone.
To aggravate the measure of our grief, all malcontent, comes Constance for her son. Be brief, good madam, for your face imports a tragic tale behind that's yet untold. Her passions stop the organ of her voice. Deep sorrow throbbeth in this befallen events. Out with it, lady, that our act may end a full catastrophe of sad laments.
My tongue is tuned to story forth mishap. When did I breathe to tell a pleasing tale? Must Constance speak? Let tears prevent her talk. Must I discourse? Let Dido sigh and say she weeps again to hear the wrack of Troy. 2 words will serve, and then my tale is done. Elinor's proud brat hath robbed me of my son.
Have patience, madame. This is chance of war. He may be ransomed. We revenge his wrong.
Be it ne'er so soon, I shall not live so long.
Despair not yet. Come, Constance, go with me. These clouds will fleet, the day will clear again.
And King Philip exits with Constance.
Now, Louis, thy fortune buds with happy spring. Our Holy Father's prayer effecteth this. Arthur is safe. Let John alone with him. Thy title next is fairest to England's crown. Now stir thy father to begin with John. The Pope says aye, and so is Albion thine.
Thanks, my lord legate, for your good conceit. 'Tis best we follow, now the game is fair. My father wants to work him your good words.
A few will serve to forward him in this. These shall not want. But let's about it then.
And they exit, and yes, even in the certain level of finitude, end point of the French position being very bad here, having lost their claimant to the throne, they immediately replace him with somebody else. I mean, poor Arthur, he's eminently disposable, isn't he? It's interesting how all those scenes swing back and forth. We start with war and death, then we get war and capture, then we get war rescuing the people who are captured with capture of somebody else, and then we flip to the other, the 2 sides of those capturings to see the different responses. Constance being quite sad there. Thoughts about that little sequence? I think it worked very well actually flowing through. I was quite glad we didn't stop and start. Anyone want to leap in with any particular moment in that? Alan?
I mean, the whole of this piece is working at one heck of a pace. I mean, there's a lot of economy of words to get a heck of a lot of story over, which I'm finding very enjoyable. That you can see this as a fast-paced production would really work incredibly well.
I think it's interesting that there are shifts in pace, I mean, throughout it. I mean, this sequence feels like it's moving fast, but some of those longer scenes, there's room for them to breathe and for people to play around with that. I don't know that the whole thing wants to go constantly at a clip. But it's good that it's structured so that you can, so that if you are looking at the clock, you can get to the end with some alacrity. Other thoughts? Thoughts about Arthur? I saw someone in the chat saying, the child, the only one with any sense of decency, or sort of going, well, he sort of is. He's also a bit of an idiot by immediately going to the person who's captured him, saying, you're not really king. Yeah, that's not a good game plan.
It was that bit though when Constance took Elinor captive, and he was just like, yeah, just remember she's don't be too mean to her. And I just thought, oh, this child is the only one with any decency. But then it's like, yeah, okay, so he's clearly not going to live long. Fair enough. I mean, it's interesting that, yeah, he's the only one who seems to have any sense of, it's like, not noblesse oblige, but like just any sense of honor, really. And he is the one with the least amount of power. So,
well, you remember, they are all family as well. I mean, that's the thing. It's not like she's some total random stranger. I mean,
exactly.
To a degree, people were with these extended royal families, but
he's the one who's got the, if not, maybe it's family feeling, maybe it's honor, but he's like, well, we should just do the right thing here. And it's like, yeah, bless you.
And yeah, Constance was particularly cut up Alexandra for good cause. I mean, let's play the scene as set up. Alexandra.
Yes, I was going to speak exactly on that subject. I really liked the structural aspect of that juxtaposition, and how cynical it feels, that you get this woman absolutely destroyed over the capture of her son and potentially the permanent loss, contrasted with immediately afterwards Pandulph and Lewis going, so anyway, you're next in line. We're totally behind you. Great, let's go back to war. I really liked the fact that we get to see that the way that the play is structured, we get to see things that matter to people on both sides of the conflict, as well as people on both sides of the conflict being completely disinterested in those aspects of value, the personal, the human value.
Yes, the cardinal is particularly cynical here, isn't it? He's come on, done his legalese, and then here he's just going, well, there's always a silver lining, old chap. I do particularly like, though it will have a cost, I suspect, that Queen Elinor is made regent in France. She's left to be in charge. I suspect that means we may not see as much of her as we would like, but who knows where the narrative will go. But it's nice that she has that.
Well, also, what was interesting was that scene 8 or 9, I think it was scene 8, is just entirely action. There's no words, as opposed to no sort of inciting each other to a duel. It's just like sort of kill each other and then move on.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen 6 as well, where we get the death of Limoges by the bastard. So he gets his little fight scene. Presumably, there's a little bit of sort of fighting there. Gets a nice little speech, and then yes, scene 8 is just stage directions, and you can have so much fun with that. I mean, it's nice that we're getting all of that. Pamela, I saw a hand. Did I imagine it?
Yeah, it was just briefly about King John that I'm really quite enjoying. At the start when he's like, "Mother, he'll never forget his claim. I would he lived not to remember it." And then like the whole way through that speech, he's like, "I leave him in your care and look after him. But also, if you don't look after him, that's fine."
Yeah.
Quite enjoying that.
Yes, it's a real question of precisely where those lines are being placed as well. Who is it? It's sort of aside but not aside, and then pointed, and it really gives the actor something to play with. Lynn.
Yeah, I'm not muted. Good. Going back a little bit, I was at first a little perplexed, like, why have this business of Queen Elinor being captured and then rescued, because that doesn't really seem to have any long-term consequences in the overall arch of the story. But it does sort of illustrate how chancy war is, that we don't really have an inevitable triumph anywhere. It could go either way. So it sort of gives you an illustration of how, how random events are. It sort of undermines any sense of providence or anything. First, oh no, the queen is captured. Oh no, not really. Now Arthur's captured. So it reinforces that sense of instability.
And I think it does have that nice little payoff of Arthur and Constance having a go at Elinor, and then of course you get it the other way round with a scene in the middle. And also I think for a lot of the audience, even possibly then, the precise layout of when things happened and how may be a bit hazy in people's mind. They might know the overall sweep of John, but the audience might not know where this is going in the detailed things. So they might be going, what's happening? Well, excitement.
Great, yeah.
I like excitement. Any other thoughts before we go into the next scene? We got basically 3 moderately long scenes to get through now, so we'll do them one at a time with discussion points. I'm seeing no hands flying around, so I'm going to go straight into scene 11. So get your friar togs on, people, because this is very friarish. The bastard, having said earlier, he's quite looking forward to doing some looting. We get this scene. So scene 11. Enter with soldiers Philip the Bastard leading Thomas, a friar, charging him to show where the abbot's gold lay.
Come on, you fat Franciscans. Dally no longer, but show me where the abbot's treasure lies, or die.
Benedicamus Domini, was ever such an injury? Sweet Saint Withold, of thy lenity, defend us from extremity, and hear us for Saint Charity oppressed with austerity. In nomine Domini, may I make my homily. Gentle gentility, grieve not the clergy.
Grey-gowned good face. Conjure ye, ne'er trust me for a groat, if this waist-girdle hang thee not that girdeth in thy coat. Now, bald and barefoot bungy birds, when up the gallows climbing, say, Philip, he had words enough to put you down with rhyming.
Pardon, Opake, Saint Francis for mercy, shall shield thee from night spells and dreaming of devils. If thou wilt forgive me and never more grieve me, with fasting and praying and Hail Mary saying, from black purgatory, a pence right sorry, Friar Thomas will warn you, it shall never shall harm you.
Come, leave off your rabble, sirs. Hang up this losel.
For charity, I beg his life. St. Francis, chiefest friar, the best in all our convent, sir, to keep a winter's fire. Oh, strangle not the good old man, my hostess' oldest guest, and I will bring you by and by unto the prior's chest.
Aye, say'st thou so? And if thou wilt, the friar is at liberty. If not, as I am an honest man, I'll hang you both for company.
Come, hither is the chest. Though simple to behold, that wanteth not of £1,000 in silver and in gold. Myself will warrant full so much. I know the abbot's store. I'll pawn my life there is no less, to have whatever is more.
I take thy word. The overplus unto thy share shall come, but if there want of full so much, thy neck shall pay the sum. Break up the coffer, friar.
And Friar Antony, he breaks open the chest and discloses a nun, Alice, who steps out of it.
Oh, I am undone. Fair Alice the nun hath took up her rest in the abbot's chest. Santa Benedicite, pardon my simplicity. Fie, Alice, confession will not solve this transgression.
What have we here? A holy nun? So keep me God in health, a smooth-faced nun. For aught I know is all the abbot's wealth. Is this the nunnery's chastity? Beshrew me, but I think they go as oft to venery as niggards to their drink. Why, paltry friar, and pander too, ye shameless shaven crown! Is this the chest that held a hoard, at least £1,000? And is this the hoard, a holy whore? Well, be the hangman nimble, he'll take the pain to pay you home, and teach you to dissemble.
Oh, spare the friar Antony, a better never was, to sing a dirge solemnly, or read a morning mass. If money be the means of this, I know an ancient nun that hath a hoard this 7 years did never see the sun. And that is yours, and what is ours, so favour now be shown. You shall command us commonly, as if it were your own.
Your honour accepted.
Aye, Thomas, I mean so.
From all save from friars.
Good sir, do not think so.
I think and see so. Why, how camest thou here?
To hide her from laymen.
'Tis true, sir, for fear.
For fear of the laity? A pitiful dread when a nun flies for succour to a fat friar's bed. But now for your ransom, my cloister-bred coney. To the chest that you speak of, where lies so much money?
For, sir, within this press of plate and money is the value of 1,000 marks, and other things, by guess. Let us alone and take it all. 'Tis yours, sir, now you know it.
Come on, Sir Friar, pick the lock. This gear doth cotton handsome, that covetousness so cunningly must pay the lecher's ransom. What is in the hoard?
Friar Thomas opens the second chest and discovers Friar Lawrence. Ta-da!
Friar Lawrence, my lord, now holy water help us. Some witch or some devil is sent to delude us. Haud credo Laurentius, thou shouldest be penned thus in the press of a nun. We are all undone, and brought to discredence if thou be Friar Lawrence.
Amor vincit omnia, so Cato affirmeth, and therefore a friar whose fancy soon burneth, because he is mortal and made of mould, he omits what he ought and doth more than he should.
How goes this gear? The friar's chest, filled with a fors and nun. The nun again locks friar up to keep him from the sun. Belike the press's purgatory, or penance passing grievous, the friar's chest a hell for nuns. How do these dolts deceive us? Is this the labour of their lives, to feed and live at ease, to revel so lasciviously as often as they please? Oh, I'll mend the fault, or fault my aim if I do miss amending. 'Tis better burn the cloisters down than leave them for offending. But holy you, to you I speak, to you religious devil, is this the press that holds the sum to quit you for your evil?
I cry peccavi, parse me, good sir, I was beguiled. Beguiled. Sorry.
Absolve, sir, for charity, she would be reconciled.
And so I shall. Sirs, bind them fast. This is their absolution. Go hang them up for hurting them. Haste them to execution.
Oh, tempus edax rerum, give children books, they tear them. Oh, vanitas vanitatis, in this waning aetatis, at 80 well near to go to this gear, to my conscience a clog to die like a dog. Exaudi me, domine, si vis me parce dabo pecuniam se habeo veniam, to go and fetch it, will dispatch it, £100 sterling for my life sparing.
And at this point, we have the entrance of Peter, a prophet with people, and lots of P's there. I'll just actually ask Pamela, quickly change from being a nun. Could you be Peter, the prophet, for the rest of the scenes?
Sure. Oh, who is here? Saint Francis be your speed. Come in my flock and follow me. Your fortunes I will read. Come hither. Boy, go, get thee home and climb not over high. For from aloft thy fortune stands in hazard, thou shalt die.
God be with you, Peter, I pray. You come to our house a Sunday.
My boy, show me thy hand. Oh, bless thee, my boy, for in thy palm I see a many troubles are ye bent to dwell, but thou shalt scape them all and do full well.
I thank you, Peter. There's a cheese for your labor. My sister prays you to come home and tell her how many husbands she shall have, and she'll give you a rib of bacon.
My masters, stay at the town's end for me. I'll come to you all anon. I must dispatch some business with a friar, and then I'll read your fortunes.
How now? A prophet? Sir prophet, whence are ye?
I am of the world, and in the world, but live not as others by the world. What I am, I know, and what thou wilt be, I know. If thou knowest me now, be answer it. If not, inquire no more what I am.
Sir, I know you will be a dissembling knave that deludes the people with blind prophecies. You are him I look for. You shall away with me. Bring away all the rabble, and you, Friar Lawrence, remember your ransom. £100 and a pardon for yourself and the rest. Come on, Sir Prophet, you shall with me to receive a prophet's reward.
And they all exit as they go. Well, there's a vast variety of verse forms going on there, plus a little bit of prose thrown in for good measure. 14ers again, always nice to see those. Bit of Skeltonics, all sorts of stuff going on there. Lois, I think you want to leap in straight away.
Yeah, it's just that Friar equals Skeltonics as far as I can see. You know, we got it in Edward I, and you get it pretty well every time a friar comes on.
Yes, I do wonder, and I haven't checked the dating, but we have in the scene with lots of friars a mention of Bungay and Bacon. I don't know if that's deliberate or just a random coincidence or not. That's one to check. So yeah, good fun. Or someone put in the comments, was this scene adapted by Brian Ricks? It has that wonderful fast-like quality. You open the box, go for the money. It's also got a dark dimension because, of course, Bastard is probably going to kill some of these people, but it's also quite fun. Alan?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether we've just seen the Brokers Men doing their part of the play.
Well, it's such a large percentage of the cast. I mean, it's beyond a sort of two-person thing. It's a chain of people doing things. So it's sort of one of the things about doubling this is just it's quite fiddly actually, making this fit with readers because they do sort of eat up people. Lynn, were you waving or just your arm was moving?
No, I did have a thought, sort of not particularly closely related to casting issues or anything like that, but I was noticing earlier at the end of scene 9, I guess it is, the bastard has this line, "Now wars are done, I long to be at home, to dive into the monks' and abbots' bags, to make some sport among the smooth-skinned nuns." And I was thinking, oh, that's dirty. That's bags is a common name for testicles, is it not? Yes, and the smooth-skinned nun. So it seemed a little out of place at the moment, but then the scene in the what is it? The friar, where friars, the monastery, is all about sex. It's all about like the nuns and the friars are having it on, and so let's just like be anti-Catholic in as many ways as we can.
Yeah, I mean, it's set up early. It's the bastard sets up that this is the scene that's going to be coming later, so we're not surprised that this is what's going to go, and you get all of the potential abuses of the clergy going on here, depending on how far you want to push the text. Stephen,
wealth, they're violating their vows of chastity.
Yeah.
Well, just to add into that, it's anti-foreign Catholic because there aren't any abbeys or nunneries or anything like that left at this point in England, are there? They've all been taken down. So it's a way to have your cake and eat it with your anti-Catholicism.
Other thoughts about this scene? The characters, mechanics of the comedy. I mean, I don't know whether the chests are going over a trap so that the infinite number of people can come in from there, or whether they're wheeling on a particularly large chest. Yeah,
the early modern clown car kind of.
Yeah. Other thoughts, Alexandra?
Also, while we're persiflating Catholicism and all these other kind of religious hypocrisies, let's throw a dig in at prophets. Why don't we? Non-biblical prophets, the palm readers, basically witches, really. Yeah, I found that from the character's title, I was sort of going, what if they got an issue with him? And the moment he started speaking, I was going, oh, okay. Yeah. Throwing in, I guess, a dig at, well, let's dig at everything we can. But also, presumably, this was a thing at the time still, right? People who know more history than me. These people who would go about, doing white magic.
Yeah, Lois, I think, wants to jump in on that.
There was a feeling that prophecy generally was a bad thing, because quite often it was prophesying things that one didn't want to happen, and could have been coming from some subversive element. Also, I think I read somewhere that prophecies were often said to have been found in the ruins of an abbey or, some old destroyed church building. So they have associations anyway with the bad old days.
And I do think the Peter the Prophet thing does feel quite random as well within the context of the rest of the scene. He just sort of turns up. We'll have a structural use later in the text, possibly. But in terms of this scene, it doesn't, I don't know how well it folds into it, per se. Any thoughts on that before we go on to the next scene, Stephen?
Just to pick up on the farce point, there is a jig where somebody hides in a chest called Singing Simpkin, which is, there's an account of it in a play called something like, in a piece called something like Tarleton's News Out of Purgatory. So we've got, for anybody who doesn't know what a jig is, it's sometimes seen as an afterpiece, sort of 10-15 minute, very often sung, little sort of light entertainment. So we get eyewitnesses totally ignoring the plays, going, this bit where they all danced at the end was fantastic. So there might be the farcical element might literally be a callback to a jig that is either to come or that's already been seen with the Queen's men.
And business with trunks is always, there's always so much potential with that, from just as a piece of business for all occasions. Dan, I saw a hand.
Yeah, interestingly, in the first edition, the first quarto of this, the Peter the Prophet's not in here. It actually cuts from one of Friar Thomas's. It goes from the nun, one of the nun's lines, "Good sir, something not think to," and then actually continues with the bastard's final line. So the nun actually takes on that line, and the entire Peter the Prophet's not there. So I don't know if this is a later edition or what, or somehow in the first edition, the first printing of it, they just didn't have it, the copy of it.
Excellent. Right. Potential interesting textual issues we can pick up later when we dive into this again in more detail. We're going to go on to scene 12, I think. Yes. I keep wanting to say enter Christaberg, but no, I won't say that. Enter Hubert de Burgh with 3 men. And we can put out to tender. Who wants to be 3 men? Elizabeth, will you be 3 men, the attendants, please?
Yes.
My masters, I have showed you what warrant I have for this attempt. I perceive by your heavy countenances you had rather be otherwise employed, and for mine own part, I would the king had made choice of some other executioner. Only this is my comfort, that a king commands, whose precepts, neglected or omitted, threateneth torture for the default. Therefore, in brief, leave me, and be ready to attend the adventure. Stay within that entry, and when you hear me cry, God save thee, issue me forth, lay hands on Arthur, set him in his chair, wherein once fast bound, leave him with me to finish the rest.
We go, they're off.
And exit the attendants, which is good because they're going to be you're going to be coming on again as Arthur any second now.
My lord, will it please your honour to take the benefice of the fair evening?
Yes, so that's interesting that the stage direction is presumably misplaced there, or not? Or is he calling off stage? Who knows? Enter Arthur to Hubert de Burgh.
Have mercy, Hubert, for thy care of me, in or to whom strength is newly known, the joy of walking is to your benefit. Yet will I take thy offer with small thanks. I would not lose the pleasure of the eye. But tell me, gracious keeper, if you can, how long the king will have me tarry you?
I know not, prince, but as I guess, not long. God send you freedom, and God save the king!
And the attendants issue forth and bind Arthur in a chair.
Why, how now, sir? What may this outrage mean? Oh, help me, Hubert, gentle keeper, help. God send this sudden useless approach, tell me not to read with wretched this life.
So, sirs, depart and leave the rest for me.
And the attendants go.
Then Arthur yield. Death frowneth in my face. What meaneth this? Good Hubert, plead the case.
Patience, young lord, and listen words of woe, harmful and harsh, hell's horror to be heard. A dismal tale fit for a fury's tongue, I faint to tell. Deep sorrow is the sound.
What, must I die?
No news of death, but tidings of more hate, a wrathful doom, and most unlucky fate. Death's dish were dainty at so fell a feast. Be deaf, hear not its hell to tell the rest.
Thou wrongest my youth with words of fear. 'Tis hell, 'tis horror, not for one to hear. What is it, man? If it must needs be done, act it and end it, that the pain were gone.
I will not chant such dolo with my tongue. Yet must I act the outrage with my hand, my heart, my head, and all my powers beside, to aid the office have at once denied. Peruse this letter. Lines of treble woe, read o'er my charge, and pardon when you know. These are to command thee, as thou tenderest our quite in mind, in the estate of our person, that presently, upon the receipt of our command, to put out the eyes of Arthur Plantagenet.
Ah, monstrous damned man, his very breath infects the elements. Contagious venom dwelleth in his heart, affecting means to poison all the world. Unreverend may I be to blame the heavens of great injustice and the miscreant lives to oppress the innocent with wrong. Ah, Hubert, makes he thee his instrument to sound the trump that causeth hell triumph? Heaven weeps, the saints do shed celestial tears. They fear thy fall and sigh thee with remorse. They mock thy conscience, moving pity there, willing to fence thee from the rage of hell. Hell, Hubert, trust me, all the plagues of hell hangs on the performance of this damned deed. This seal, the warrant of the body's bliss, ensure of safety and chieftain of thy soul. Subscribe not, Hubert, give not God's path away. I speak not only for eyes' privilege, the chief exterior that I would enjoy, but for thy peril, far beyond my pain. Thy sweet soul's loss, more than my eyes laying back, a cause eternal and eternal too. Advise thee, Hubert, for the case is hard, to lose salvation for a king's reward.
My lord, a subject dwelling in the land is tied to execute the king's command.
God's command, whose power reacheth further, that no command should stand and force to murder.
But that same essence hath ordained a law, a death for guilt, to keep the world in awe.
I plead not guilty, treasonless and free.
But that appeal, my lord, concerns not me.
Why, thou art he that mayst omit the peril.
I, if my sovereign would remit his quarrel.
His quarrel is unhallowed, false and wrong.
Then be the blame to whom it doth belong.
Why, that's to thee, if thou, as they proceed, conclude their judgment with so vile a deed.
Wait, then no execution can be lawful if judges' dooms must be reputed doubtful.
Yes, where in form of law, in place and time, the offender is convicted of the crime.
My lord, this long expostulation heaps up more grief than promise of redress. For this I know, and so resolved I end, that subjects' lives on king's commands depend. I must not reason why he is your foe, but do his charge, since he commands it so.
Then do thy charge, and charged be thy soul. With wrongful persecution done this day, you wrongly lives whose superficies yet I do behold with eyes that nature lent. Send forth the terror of your murderous frown, to wreak my wrong upon the murderers that rob me of your fair reflecting view. Let hell to them as earth they wish to me, be dark and direful guerdon for their guilt. And let the black tormentors of deep Tartary upbraid them with this damned enterprise, inflicting chained tortures on their soul. Delay not, Hubert, my orisons are ended. Begin, I pray thee, leave me of my sight, but to perform the tragedy indeed, conclude the period with a mortal stab. Constance, farewell, tormentor, come away, make my dispatch the tyrant's feasting day.
Faint, I fear. My conscience bids desist. Faint, did I say? Fear was it that I named? My king commands. That warrant sets me free, but God forbids, and he commandeth kings. That great commander counterchecks my charge. He stays my hand. He maketh soft my heart. Go, cursed tools, your office is exempt. Cheer thee, young lord. Thou shalt not lose an eye, though I should purchase it with loss of life. I'll to the king, and say his will is done, and of the languor tell him thou art dead. Go in with me, for Hubert was not born to blind those lamps that nature polished so.
Hubert, if ever Arthur be in state, look for amends of this received gift. I took my eyesight by thy courtesy, thou lentest them me. I will not be ingrate, but now procrastination may offend. Issue that thy kindness undertakes. Depart we, Hubert, to prevent the worst.
And having unbound Arthur from the chair, they exit. And just a note to anyone who knows where this is going, don't say where this is going, because at least one person in the chat's getting quite excited by all the confusion. So I don't want to. No spoilers, people. No spoilers. One textual note, which actually, even though it is technically wrong, it came out quite well. Was the confused Hubert, double Huberts. So that Hubert is actually in the letter. It's the appellate. There's a bit where you should say Hubert. These are when you read the letter out. But it may also be said by Arthur that you're holding the letter and Arthur's reading it. However, I actually kind of preferred it this way. I thought it worked quite weirdly well. With an accident, but I quite like that. So yeah, tense. The chat is coming up with all sorts of things. Some people are not very impressed with you, but who would like to jump in on that one? Pamela, you expressed an opinion of Hubert's murdering practice here.
Yeah, I was a bit frustrated that he was basically asking the person's permission to put their eyes out. It's like, oh, I'm really sorry, I've been told I have to do it, but God says it's not okay. But like, if you say it's okay, I know he didn't actually say that, but it came across a bit to me like he was doing that. And I felt like he needed to make his own mind up rather than spending an entire scene deciding what to do. But then it would be a boring play, wouldn't it? So, you know, yeah. And
the Queen's Men obviously have a thing about eyes, because we've got isn't it Selimus that also has the eye gouging? So you know, it's in the air. It's in the air. Part of the repertoire. Other thoughts? Who wants to leap in? Oh, it's Lynn.
It strikes me as a little weird that the two places that this text uses rhymed verse is the most grisly scene, or potentially grisly scene, and the most comic scene. That did the scholars in the room or anyone else have a, what do you make of
that? Sarah?
The comic scene, though, like the Friar's scene, that has the potential to be quite grisly. I mean, it was, while I was reading that, I was like, oh, I know Dan's mentioned Tarantino in the past. This is just, it's like, I thought that was really dark and quite disturbing, that scene, even though it was really, really funny. So I don't know, maybe it's to do with like the darker scenes, because I mean, yeah, funny, but also really quite, potentially quite violent.
Is it perhaps calling to some sort of innocence for Arthur, and that there's an element there? It was also once again reminds me of the Abraham and Isaac situation of an older person standing over a young person who has to sort of try and talk them round, or not talk them round, or make your mind up. The whole thing about make your mind up is something that we see there. So I wonder if that's just an interesting crossover. Alan?
I'm just wondering, actually, with the two scenes we've had fairly close together, as has been commented in verse, the scene with the monk, the friars and the nun, to a certain extent, one can see that that's probably not going to end well, but you've got the comedy to offset that. This one, which from the start is doom and gloom, and suddenly ends well. So I'm just wondering whether he's playing with expectations.
I don't know that rhyming is automatically, denoting comedy. Stephen?
Yeah, I wonder if, so when we often see a couple at the end of a scene, don't we? And that's a kind of, haha, right, that's my final point. And what seems to be going on here sometimes is when we have a couplet, and that's, so we maybe expect that to be a concluding point, and then it's matched with another couplet. So there's a to and fro between them. And also there's a bit of a, there's a short passage where the second person caps the rhyme of the first person, which we see in wooing scenes, don't we, when there's this kind of witty banter to and fro. So it's something to do with the way that rhyme and kind of making a final point or some kind of closure might go together in the audience's responses. So we would assume that if somebody's capping somebody else, then they're gaining a point in an argument. But we also see a couplet which is immediately kind of faced with another couplet, and so there's a sort of backwards and forwards, working with perhaps with audience expectations of what rhyme does when it's so sort of short and interactive as it is here. We don't have a 10-line speech with lots of rhyme so much as rhyme being used as part of the interaction.
Yeah, their rhyming is merging as he starts to turn him round. Perhaps that I think the wooing idea is really, really strong there. That this is a kind of wooing scene. Lois.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of one line each thing, sticomythia, is quite. It's something he got from classical drama, and then sometimes it's 2 lines each. I mean, it's chopped logic. It's used for arguments to suggest that each one has got about an equal amount of good sense or argument to express. It gives a sense of a real balance and something quite tense there. I did find a lot of the writing rather puzzling, actually. I couldn't figure out what Arthur was talking about when he was addressing the 2 orbs or eyes. I mean, what are those anyway? He's talking about his own eyes and then some other eyes, and I don't know, it seemed to me that some of the speeches there got rather over-involved.
Well, he is panicking, so maybe there's a character note to be played there. He said, desperately doing a rearguard action. Other thoughts before we go to the final scene of this session? Alexandra?
On the subject of massive changes in mood that we mentioned earlier, with the Pandulph's appearance sort of slamming into the verse of the scene, and then the scene restoring to verse as the excommunication part of the plot was resolved. There is a similar thing that happens here, where in the previous scene we had some verse, we then had we moved into prose at the end of the what we are considering the comedy scene with so the prophet interaction, and then Hubert comes in with some very serious prose. In comes Arthur, and we're in verse. So there seems to be something to do with sincerity, perhaps, or to do with the mood that is trying to be conveyed, or some other, again, not knowing the intentions of the author, but in terms of what we can do in a production, these are really clear indicators of mood shifts. And so where you pointed out, Robert, that the bit that is read out of the letter, that's actually prose as well. So again, we're interrupting the flow of this impassioned attempt from each of the Arthur and Hubert to persuade the other of the righteousness of their perspective. We have these moments of something else completely slamming into it.
I wonder about Hubert's, that opening speech in prose there, again, whether there's an almost legalistic quality to that. These are the instructions we've got, and slipping to that, I find an interesting potential. I mean, I think, going back to the original as it should have been, with Arthur reading the instructions about having his eyes removed, the irony to be played there is grim, but very effective. Alan?
Just wondering whether the use of verse is actually an indicator of status, because by and large it's the more aristocratic characters who get more in verse.
That's often true, but you'll notice that the bastard always speaks in iambic pentameter.
Apart from his initial, the point at which he first appears, he's in prose, isn't he?
I think we can get very easily bogged down in things that look like they have patterns, but they don't necessarily actually have patterns. We could go down too many rabbit holes there. Anything about the scene in more just general, the shape of it? Any additional thoughts about the dramaturgy? What you might want to do with it as actors? Those sorts of thoughts.
It is really long and drawn out, but I think that could have a really powerful effect of the sort of the suspense of, is the torture going to happen or not? I think that's what the effect of Arthur's long speech that Lois was saying she was having a hard time following. I think that one of the effects of that is to heighten the suspense. The sense of it maybe isn't so important as just the actual length.
And we pay for its relative length with the short scenes that we had before that move really quite fast. I mean, I think that's the thing. There are moments in a play where you really push the pace because you want to get to payoff when you slow everything right down, and, holding letters, holding implements, man tied to a chair. You can hold the moment a lot there. Dan?
Just one final point to tie in the structure, the verse structure, the stichomythia, as Lois was talking about. And then to go back to when we were talking about the prose, whether it was intentionally written that way or not. The more and more, I'm only here the second day, but the more and more I'm listening to this play, it seems to me that the playwright or playwrights are certainly playing around with the verse and prose to, I guess, to go with, to follow what Alexandra was suggesting in the chat, to suggest an emotional state or suggest the rhythm of how the scene should go there. I wonder, given that this was a Queensman play, if this scene with Arthur and Hubert was intentionally given to two actors who have such a type of rapport that they were used to, I guess, with these types, or wanting to establish that type of rapport, as Stephen was suggesting there, with which are generally used in wooing scenes or in violent disputes.
Stephen?
Yeah, it could be master and apprentice, couldn't it?
Alexandra.
Just supporting what Dan was saying, there's something, I was looking up and down the scene, and there's something really interesting structurally that seems to happen where we get Hubert and Arthur interacting in relatively close, relatively similar length bits of speech, and you get 4 lines, 6 lines, 4 lines, 6 lines ish, and then suddenly it's 2 2 2 2 1 1 1 1, and then they're long. I think there's one longer speech and then a massive speech. So that's, yeah, there are some interesting indications of ways to play this that are just embedded in the text, and also, as you said, there are some wonderful setups and payoffs to be drawn out of this scene, that, taking advantage of the fact that an audience might know where it goes, could be intensely emotionally engaging for us as an audience.
Okay, let's move to the final scene. It's scene 13. It's even longer than the last one. We're going to rattle through the whole thing. Enter King John, Essex, Salisbury, Pembroke. I don't know why I keep saying Salisbury and Pembroke. They never damn well say anything. Actually, no, Pembroke will say something. It's fine. I'm just getting annoyed with those things. And other lords. Other lords are there as well.
Now, warlike followers, rest a thought undone that may impeach us of fond oversight. The French have felt the temper of our swords. Cold terror keeps possession in their souls, checking their overdaring arrogance for buckling with so great an overmatch. The arch-proud titled priest of Italy, that calls himself Grand Vicar under God, is busy now with trenchal obsequies, mass, and month's mind, dirge, I know not what, to ease their souls in painful purgatory that have miscarried in these bloody wars. Heard you not, lords, when first his holiness had tidings of our small account of him, how, with a taunt, vaunting upon his toes, he urged a reason why the English ass disdained the blessed ordinance of Rome. The title, reverently might I infer, became the kings that erst have borne the load. Sorry, I've just completely screwed up my script here. I was tapping it. The slavish weight of that controlling priest, who at his pleasure tempered them like wax to carry arms on danger of his curse, banding their souls with warrants of his hand. I grieve to think how kings in ages past, simply devoted to the see of Rome, have run into 1,000 acts of shame. But now, for confirmation of our state, as if we had pruned the more than needful branch that did oppress the true well-growing stock, it resteth we, throughout our territories, be reproclaimed and invested king.
My liege, that were to busy men with doubts. Once were you crowned, proclaimed, and with applause, your city streets have echoed to the ear. God save the king! God save our sovereign John! Pardon my fear, my censure doth infer, your highness not deposed from regal state, would breed a mutiny in people's minds. What it should mean to have you crowned again.
Pembroke, perform what I have bid thee do. Thou knowest not what induceth me to this. Essex, go in, and lordings all begone. About this task I will be crowned anon.
And indeed, everybody exits, except for Philip the Bastard, who enters.
Philip, what news? How do the abbot's chests? The friars fatter than nuns are fair. What cheer with churchmen? Had they gold or no? Tell me, how hath thy office took effect?
My lord, I have performed your highness' charge. The ease-bred abbots and the barefoot friars, the monks, the priors, and holy cloistered nuns are all in health, and were, my lord, in wealth till I had titled and told their holy hordes. I doubt not, when your highness sees my prize, you may proportion all their former pride.
Why so? Now sorts it, Philip, as it should. This small intrusion into abbey trunks will make the popelings excommunicate, curse, ban, breathe out damned orisons as thick as hailstones for the spring's approach. But yet as harmless and without effect as is the echo of a cannon's crack discharged against the battlements of heaven. What news else befell thee, Philip?
Strange news, my lord. Within your territories near Pomfret is a prophet new sprung up, whose divination volleys wonders forth. To him the commons throng with country gifts. He sets a date unto the beldame's death, prescribes how long the virgin's state shall last, distinguisheth the moving of the heavens, gives limits unto holy nuptial rites, foretelleth famine, aboundeth plenty forth. Of fate, of fortune, life and death he chats with such assurance, scruples put apart, as if he knew the certain dooms of heaven, or kept a register of all the destinies.
Thou tell'st me marvels. Would thou had brought'st the man? We might have questioned him of things to come.
My lord, I took a care of had I wist, and brought the prophet with me to the court. He stays, my lord, but at the presence door. Pleaseth your highness, I will call him in.
Nay, stay a while. We will have him here anon. A thing of weight is first to be performed.
And yes, the nobles have all been persuaded to come back on stage again, Essex, Pembroke and others, and they crown King John, and then they all cry all together now. God save the King!
Lordings, friends, supporters of our state, admire not this unaccustomed course, nor in your thoughts blame not this deed of yours. Once, ere this time, was I invested king, your fealty sworn as liegeman to our state. Once, since that time, ambitious weeds have sprung to stain the beauty of our garden plot. But heavens, in our conduct, rooting thence the false intruders, breakers of world's peace, have to our joy made sunshine chase the storm. After the which, to try your constancy, that now I see is worthy of your names, we crave once more your helps for to invest us into the right that envy sought to rack. Once was I not deposed, your former choice now twice been crowned and applauded king. Your cheered action to install me so infers assured witness of your loves, and binds me over in a kingly care to render love with love, rewards of worth to balance down requital to the full. But thanks the while, thanks, lordings, to you all. Ask me and use me, try me and find me yours.
A boon, my lord, advantage of your words. We ask together in all our loyalties.
We take the time your highness bids us ask. Please it you grant, you make your promise good, with lesser loss than one superfluous heir, that not remembered falleth from your head.
My word is passed. Receive your boon, my lords. What may it be? Ask it, and it is yours.
We crave, my lord, to please the commons with the liberty of Lady Constance's son, whose dearest darkeneth your highness right, as if you kept him prisoner to the end yourself were doubtful of the thing you have. Dismiss him thence, your highness needs not fear, twice by consent you are proclaimed our king.
This, if you grant, were all unto your good. For simple people, muse you keep him close.
Your words have searched the centre of my thoughts, confirming warrant of your loyalties. Dismiss your counsel, sway my state. Let John do nothing but by your consent. How now, Philip, what ecstasy is this? Why cast thou up thy eyes to heaven so?
For indeed, up in the heavens here, the 5 moons appear. Please, everyone, keep your trousers on.
See, my lord, strange apparitions, glancing mine eye to see the diadem placed by the bishops on your highness's head. From forth a gloomy cloud, which curtain-like displayed itself, suddenly espied 5 moons, reflecting as you see them now. Even in the moment that the crown was placed, gan they appear, holding the course you see.
What might portend these apparitions, unusual signs, forerunners of event, presages of strange terror to the world? Believe me, lords, the object fears me much. Philip, thou toldst me of a wizard late. Fetch in the man to descant of this show.
Exit the bastard.
The heavens frown upon the sinful earth when, with prodigious unaccustomed signs, they spot their Sophies with such wonder.
Before the ruins of Jerusalem, such meteors were the ensigns of his wrath that hastened to destroy the faithful town.
And re-enter the bastard with the prophet.
Is this the man?
It is, my lord.
Prophet of Pomfret, for so I hear thou art, that calculates of many things to come, who by a power replete with heavenly gift canst blab the counsel of thy Maker's will. If fame be true, or truth be wronged by thee, decide in ciphering what these 5 moons portend this climb, if they breathe out thy gift, and if I live to see thy divination take a true effect, I'll honour thee above all earthly men.
The sky wherein these moons have residence presenteth Rome, the great metropolis, where sits the Pope in all his holy pomp. 4 of the moons present 4 provinces, to wit, Spain, Denmark, Germany, and France, that bear the yoke of proud commanding Rome, and stand in fear to tempt the prelate's curse. The smallest moon, that whirls about the rest, impatient of the place he holds with them, doth figure forth this island, Albion, who gins to scorn the sea and state of Rome, and seeks to shun the edicts of the Pope. This shows the heaven, and this, I do aver, is figured in these apparitions.
Then it seems the heavens smile on us, giving applause for leaving of the Pope. But, for they chance in our meridian, do they effect no private growing ill to be inflicted on us in this climb?
The moons effect no more than what I said, but on some other knowledge that I have, by my prescience ere Ascension Day, have brought the sun unto his usual height of crown, estate, and royal dignity. Thou shalt be clean despoiled and dispossessed.
False dreamer, perish with thy witched news, villain. Thou woundst me with thy fallacies. If it be true, die for thy tidings' price. If false, for fearing me with vain suppose. Thence with the witch, hell damned secretary, lock him up, sure. For by my faith I swear, true, not true. The wizard shall not live.
Is this a natural pause or an unnatural pause?
I've screwed the script again, I'm sorry.
Before Ascension Day, I think you need to pick up from.
Yeah, sorry. The wizard shall not live before Ascension Day. It would be cause hereof. Cut off the cause, and then the effect will die. Mercy serves to maim myself. The root does live from whence these thorns spring up. Aye, my promise passed for his delivery. Crown friends, fail faith. The devil go with all. The brat shall die. That terrifies me thus. Pembroke and Essex, I recall my grant. I will not buy your favours with my fear, and murmur not. My will is law enough. I love you well. If I loved you better, I would not buy it with my discontent.
Enter Hubert.
Now, what news with thee?
According to your highness' strict command, young Arthur's eyes are blinded and extinct.
Why so? They may feel the crown but never see it.
Nor see nor feel, for of the extreme pain within 1 hour, he gave up the ghost.
What? Is he dead?
He is, my lord.
Then with him die my cares.
Now joy betide thy soul.
Heavens revenge thy death.
What have you done, my lord? Was ever heard a deed of more inhuman consequence? Your foes will curse, your friends will cry revenge. Unkindly rage, more rough than the northern wind to chip the beauty of so sweet a flower. What hope in us for mercy on a fault when kinsman dies without impeach of cause? As you have done, so come to cheer you with. The guilt shall never be cast in my teeth.
And exit the nobles.
Are you gone? The devil be your guide, proud rebels as you are, to brave me. So, saucy, uncivil checkers of my will. Your tongues give edge unto the fatal knife that shall have passage through your traitorous throats. Breathe not pug words too soon abroad, lest time prevent the issue of thy reach. Arthur is dead. Aye, there the course he grows. But while he lived, the danger was the more. His death hath freed me from 1,000 fears. But it hath purchased me 10 times 10,000 foes. Why, all is one, such luck shall hold his gain to whom the devil owes an open shame. His life, a foe that levelled at my crown. His death, a frame to pull my building down. My thoughts, heart still unquiet by his end, who living aimed shrewdly at my room. But to prevent that plea, twice was I crowned. Twice did my subjects swear me fealty, and in my conscience loved me as their liege, in whose defence they would have pawned their lives. Now they shun me as a serpent's sting, a tragic tyrant, stern and pitiless, and not a title follows after John, but butcher, bloodsucker, and murderer. What planet governed my nativity to bode me sovereign types of high estate so interlaced with hellish discontent, wherein fell fury hath no interest? Cursed be the crown, chief author of my care. No, cursed my will that made the crown my care. Cursed be my birthday. Cursed 10 times the womb that yielded me alive into the world. Art thou there, villain? Furies haunt thee still for killing him whom all the world laments.
Why, here, my lord, your highness, hand and seal, charging on life's regard to do the deed.
Dull, conceited peasant. Knowest thou not it was a damned execrable deed? Shows me a seal. Villain, both our souls have sold their freedom to the thrall of hell under the warrant of that cursed seal. Yet, villain, hang thyself and say in hell that I'm coming for a kingdom there.
My lord, the tender happy tale I tell, for heaven's health, send Satan packing hence that instigates your highness to despair. If Arthur's death be dismal to be heard, bandy the news for rumours of untruth. He lives, My lord, the sweetest youth alive, in health, with eyesight, not a hair amiss. This heart took vigour from this forward hand, making it weak to execute your charge.
What? Lindsay! Let sweet hope come again. Chase hence despair, the purveyor for hell. Hubert, tell these tidings to my lords, that throb in passions for young Arthur's death. Hence, Hubert, stay not till thou hast revealed the wished news of Arthur's happy health. I go myself, the joyfulest man alive, to story out this new supposed crime.
And ends the scene. And in terms of the way it was published, it then claims end of the first part. Dramaturgically, whether that is has any meaning whatsoever is something we'll discuss tomorrow. We are into extra time already, so I'm going to sort of narrow focus down to general comments about this scene, as well as final thoughts about the play itself. I do love Five Moons, but I assume they get winched down. You know, all those swift backs and forth. We have Return of the Prophet, and all sorts of constant shifts. So, you know, the king gets crowned again. All the nobles are being a bit obstreperous. You know, there's a lot going on in this scene, and you know, Hubert coming on saying that he's done the blinding bit, and then he hasn't. And I love the way that King John just turns on him the moment he said, "You killed him. How could you kill him?" Go ahead, the thing. You know, blame the person under you for the thing you asked them to do. So, final thoughts about this scene, the rest of the play. Who'd like to come in first? Lynn, have you volunteered?
Sure. I was just thinking that long speech of King John's, where he starts out quite defiant, speaking to his absent lords, "Are you gone? The devil be your guide." And by the end of it, he's cursing his own birthday. That's going to be a challenging one for an actor to sell, that transition from, "I don't care what anybody thinks, I'm king," to, "Oh boy, I have really messed up. And it's all your fault, Hubert." That's a lot of kind of psychological and emotional ground to cover, even in a long speech.
Yeah, it's reminding me a bit of True Tragedy of Richard III, where he has this sort of mental breakdown speech moment. I don't know if it's an exact parallel, but you know, it's the same company. So maybe that's a bit of business they always like to throw in. Alexandra.
Yeah, I was reading that as a very sort of belly of the whale moment, a very kind of, you know, this is his darkest time and his flailing and trying to cast the blame on everybody else. And it ends up, you know, he ends up having the realization that it's all his fault. And I was seeing very kind of modern writing and very enjoyable parallels in that. And the other thing is, even is again in this scene, we get those sudden and enormous shifts in what is happening to the plot as well as within the characters. And I like the fact that, unlike in other plays that we've read, they don't feel they feel sudden, but they don't feel like they come out of nowhere and kind of wreck the story. They build the story up, and that's a comment on the whole play so far as well.
There's a constant setting up of the thing that's going to be happening in the next scene or two scenes down the line. There's you know, just even if it's just a seed of what's coming next, it is nicely structured. We've had that for quite a few plays actually that done that structurally. Eric, do you have any thoughts about this scene or the play overall?
I was going to say that it's interesting how like King John isn't really remorseful about like Arthur's death as you know, because it's like his nephew. It's just like because it's politically bad for him. It's not so much, "Oh my God, my nephew is dead. What am I gonna do?" That kind of thing. It's kind of more like, "There goes my career." Well, not career, but like sort of, yeah.
Yeah. Elizabeth, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be one character that carries the narrative, so it's easy to get a bit lost in all the different political intrigues that are going on. So I think it's a really political play that's politically motivated, which is really, valid. But in terms of characters, none of the characters really jump out or seem particularly lifelike. And every time we get to start to know a character, the narrative moves away from that character and another one. I was quite surprised by Arthur's death. He didn't lose his eyes, but then he lost his life.
Yes, that's that question for the audience is, does he die? Does he not die? And then he hasn't. And it's, the audience might take Hubert as, oh, maybe there was a bit we missed.
Yes.
And there's that wonderful sort of confusion going on. Sarah, final thoughts or thoughts about this scene?
Well, I love a good bit of political intrigue, I have to say. They're my favourite sort of Netflix dramas. As someone who has hitherto managed to avoid all plays about King John, by which I'm of course talking about the John Bale one, I'm really enjoying this because I don't know what's going to happen, and it is holding my attention. The way history plays don't always. Some do, some are great, but some I do get a bit bored, and it's like, oh, there's lords coming in and there's lords coming out, and there's tyrants throwing their weight around and being petulant in their crowns. But this one I'm loving because I'm seeing, I love the politics, and it is so deftly written, I think, with the way it's structured, the way it's paced, and I think the characterization. So, yeah, really enjoying it.
Pamela, I think you get to be King John tomorrow. So you're going from prophet to king in one fell swoop. Thoughts on the play? Obviously, you missed the first session.
I did.
So stepping in, how's it feeling for you?
The one thing that's kind of really sticking out to me is how little I trust King John, and so how little I'm trusting myself for tomorrow. And even at the end of that scene where he was like, oh, Arthur is alive, how wonderful. I'm not sure that Hubert is going to get away with not having killed him. I'm also really enjoying the play. I'm loving the fact that things are set up in advance and get picked up. Like the prophet coming back made me really happy. And again, I'm hoping he might have more to do tomorrow. I'm a bit with Sarah on that history plays aren't always my thing, and I also don't really know this story, so I'm excited to know what happens tomorrow.
Alan, any final thoughts about this scene?
The whole thing is working quite nicely. I must admit, I've been getting a fair sense of deja vu with some of the Richard III material that we've dealt with from various plays, some of which seem to be almost straight lift or almost pastiche in some cases. But
I think it might be more preparatory material. I'm
Sorry?
not sure on it might be preparatory material. It depends on the ordering of text.
Yeah, I'm not sure which order they come in, but some of it resonated with, because we've done at least 2 Richard III pieces, haven't we? And also the way that he does keep doing this setup of, you think that's the way the scene's going, and suddenly you get a government style screeching U-turn.
Yeah. The way, I mean, it's interesting about the scene we've just done, where the way the nobles are acting, the way they're responding to John. They don't trust him either. They don't. There's an awful lot of politicking going on, which we're only to a degree getting the sort of surface layer of. I'm sure if Salisbury was saying more dialogue, we'd get a lot more detail on what's going on. I think it's 4 lines so far, but he's in so many scenes. Lois, any final thoughts?
Well, I'm quite fond of history plays. I think the author had real problems with this one, just because on the one hand he wants to do the King John as heroic defier of the Pope, and on the other hand there's just so little really good to say about him apart from that. And I was a bit surprised that in this last scene Hubert's lines about putting Arthur's eyes out in his dying were said in front of the lords. I mean, I would have thought that that was the kind of thing that John might have preferred to keep secret from them. It's pretty hard to see how to come back from that.
Maybe that's deliberate political sabotage on his side. That's interesting about what's said in front of people and what isn't. I think that's an interesting thing that comes into how you stage it as well, and how that works. And was it said to them for everyone to hear? Was it just overheard, and it should have been more sotto voce? I mean, so lots of play there. Dan, final thoughts about this scene?
I love a good history play. Normally I would say we need some more humor in this, but it's keeping my attention. What I'm not sure of is how this actually would play out on stage, whether I would be bored to death of this, or me just being a history play geek, I would just enjoy it and the rest of the audience would not. I guess I'll just wait and see. The other comment, of course, I'll make is I'm really enjoying thinking about the structure of the play, the verse and the prose and whatnot, and I'm interested to see where this goes on. I am also interested in seeing, once again, how this applies to the Queen's Men, considering we've done so many of them, and how this fits in with their repertoire. What I'm not seeing is, for so many French characters, is a lot of French dialogue, which I'm used to seeing in some of these plays. So it makes me wonder about who was in their company at the time, or why they did not write that in there.
I think there's I had something I was going to say there, and it just completely went. I'm sure it was brilliant. Probably wasn't. Following on from what you were saying there about, whether it genuinely holds attention or not, or whether just because we're doing it in bits, how this overall flows and comes across when there's no one really to root for. And you were saying that there isn't overt comedy. I mean, there are comic scenes. There's comedy in the drama of what you're seeing, but there aren't overt clown parts in the way that we've had with other plays. That here comedy yokel. Peter the Prophet might function that way, but it doesn't seem to in terms of the actual dialogue itself. Obviously, the whole nun stuff, Friar stuff, feels like light relief. That scene is a comic scene. Some of the earlier scenes, that we were doing yesterday felt quite comedy focused, but yeah, it seems like it's doing something quite modern in the sense that it's not mixing. It is mixing everything together rather than sort of demarcating. And now the funny thing happens, and now the serious bit happens. And I think there's an awful lot as we go into the last two sessions, of which hopefully most people here are going to be for at least one of them. As we go, the next couple of sessions, we're going to have more time per text. We had irritatingly long scenes at exactly the wrong moments of scheduling, so we ended up with 2 long sessions. So it's going to be really interesting how the rest of the play flows. So all that really remains, as we're well into extra time, and I apologize if I've cut anyone short, is thank all the readers here. Thank Helen Good for helping prepare the text, and all that remains is goodbye.
Bye.